A tale for the Yule fire. Clears throat, sets down the tankard, leans forward. Pull close now. All of you. You too, stranger. There's room enough by the fire and cold enough outside to kill a man's pride. Good. Now hush. I'm gonna tell you about 4 people who walked into the Ashvan Wood on a night just like this one. Yule night. Snow coming sideways. And not a one of them walked out the same. The first was a dwarf named Brindal Coppervein. Fighter, veteran of 3 wars, a man whose beard had more scars than his face. Which is saying something. The second was a half-elf called Sarah Night Whisper. A rogue. She had a way of entering rooms that made you wonder if she'd always been there. Third, a wizard. Human. Yeah. Went by Ashen. Carried a staff twice his height and tripped over it twice a day, regular as a rooster. And the fourth, Sister Marin of the Hearth Order. Cleric. The kind of woman who could set your broken arm and make you feel grateful for the experience. 4 strangers. Shared a table right here in this very in fact. Right about there if I recall. They'd each received the same letter. No signature. Just a wax seal shaped like a cracked bell and 3 words inside. The barrow breathes. Now, most sensible folk would have thrown that letter into a fine fire much like this one, and ordered another round. But sensible folk don't become legends, do they? They followed the road north until the road stopped being a road and became a suggestion. Then a memory. Then just trees and darkness and the sound of snow settling on branches like something trying very hard not to be heard. Brindal led. He always led. It was a compulsion with him, like sneezing. Sarah disappeared into the shadows at the edge of the group, her compulsion. Ashen muttered calculations to himself, which the others had learned to ignore. And Marin walked in the center of them all, her holy symbol glowing faint as a candle through a curtain. Just enough light to see the next step. Never more than that. Never less. They found the barrow at midnight. It was old. Older than the kingdom, older than the name of this valley. A hill that wasn't quite shaped right, with a door of standing stones that had been sealed with iron rings the width of a man's thigh. The rings were broken. From the inside. Pauses, takes a slow sip. Now, I want you to picture that. Something with enough will and enough strength, had decided it was done being buried. And it had gotten its way. Brindal wanted to go in immediately. Sarah said they should scout first. Ashen said the arcane residue on the door stones was at least 3 centuries old and probably tied to a binding ritual of the Thornwood school. Marin looked at all 3 of them and said quietly, "Something is weeping inside." That silenced the debate. They went in. The barrow was not a tomb. Or rather, it had been built as one, but something had made it into a home. Crude furniture. Bones arranged with strange care. And at the center, in a chamber lit by green foxfire growing from the walls like moss. A creature. Once a man maybe. A white, by its hollow eyes and the cold that poured off it like a second skin. But it wasn't attacking. It was sitting. Head in its hands. And it was unmistakably weeping. Every instinct Brindal had, 40 years of instinct, battle-honed, told him to raise his axe. And he did. He raised it. And Marin put her hand on his arm. "Wait," she said. She stepped forward. Into the cold. Into the green light. And she asked it, God's help her, she asked it, "What was taken from you?" The fire pops and settles. What was taken? You see, that's the question that changes everything. Not what are you? Not why are you here? But what was taken? The white looked up. And it spoke, in a voice like wind through a keyhole, and it told her its name. Its true name. The one it had before. I won't repeat it. Names like that aren't for ints. But I'll tell you what it asked for. It asked them to find a locket. A small brass locket with a painted portrait inside, buried with a woman in the village churchyard of Grethmere. A woman who had been alive when it was alive, 300 years past. Someone it had loved. Someone who had never known it. And it had carried that not knowing into death, and death had not softened it. All it wanted was to hold the locket. What? And then it would return to the dark willingly. Brindal said it was a trick. Sarah said she'd seen worse requests from living men and they should do it. Ashen said, academically, that the metaphysical implications were fascinating. And Marin had already turned back toward the door. They rode hard through the snow. They reached Grethmere by dawn. They explained themselves to a very confused and then very frightened and then very quietly moved groundskeeper. They found the grave. They found the locket. The portrait inside was faded almost to nothing. A woman with dark eyes and an expression that said she'd heard every joke already and found them wanting. Small smile. They rode back. The white was where they'd left it. Marin walked to it. Held out the locket. The white's hands, frost gray, wrong in every joint, reached for it with a gentleness that none of them ever quite forgot. It held it for a long moment, looking, just looking. Then it folded its hands around the locket, closed its hollow eyes and came apart, slowly, like ash from a fire that's finally burned through. Just dissolved in the green light, until there was nothing left but the cold and the quiet and 4 people standing in a very old room. Brindle cleared his throat. Ashen wrote several notes. Sarah found a silver candlestick and pocketed it. Grief takes people differently. And Marin stood there a moment longer. Then she said to the empty room, "Rest now." They didn't talk much on the road back. Snow had stopped. The stars were out, the winter stars, the cold bright ones. Brindle broke the silence somewhere around the 3rd mile. He said, "I still think it could have been a trick." And Sarah said, "It wasn't." And he said, "No, it wasn't." And that was that. Leans back, picks up the tankard. They came back through that door, this door, the very one you came through tonight, with frostbite and empty stomachs and a story none of them told for years. Some things you have to let sit before you can speak them. But here we are. Yule night. Fire's warm. And now you've heard it. Raises the cup. To Brindle. To Sarah. To Ashen and his notes. And to Marin, who knew the right question to ask. And to whatever it was in that barrow, who loved someone once across 300 years of dark. May it rest. Sets the cup down, stares into the fire. Right then. Who wants another round?